Hey there, I'm Paul Kaltenbach, live in Hell's Kitchen, New York City, and you're tuned to International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report on Sunday, August the 13th, 2023, here on CKUT Radio in Montreal, 90.3 FM. My name's Sheldon. Gilles is with me as usual. We thank you for tuning in to our show today. We have another 30 minutes of news and information from things going on out there in the world of radio. If you would like to get in touch with us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streaming and archived on ckut.ca. That is the website for CKUT Radio in Montreal. Our Facebook group is International Radio Report. We have one new member this week. We welcome Mike in Akron, Ohio, bringing us to 933 members. And finally, our YouTube channel, where you can go and catch the show at your convenience and go back and listen to older shows as well. That is simply look for International Radio Report on YouTube, and you can subscribe, where we have 858 subscribers. And Gilles, you'll start things off. We have a big event coming up later today, actually, this evening.
Some really cool event coming up today, and it is Ghosts in the Airglow, and this is a new harp experiment coming up thanks to Amanda Dawn Christie. On August 14th, 2023 UTC date and time of 03:30 to 04:30 UTC, that is tonight at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the East Coast that it starts. It's a 1-hour interdisciplinary artist Amanda Dawn Christie will transmit the final composition of Ghosts in the Airglow, an artwork developed for the Ionospheric Research Instrument at the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or called HARP. This third and final transmission will be the capstone of Christie's 5-year self-directed residency at the facility, wherein the artist treats harp as a musical instrument as much as a scientific one, using its unique capabilities to entangle space science experiments with works of art. In one movement of Ghosts in the Airglow, Christie uses the ionosphere like a giant mixing board to blend the radio frequencies of two different saxophone tracks together before they ricochet back down through Earth on a single frequency. Other movements are modeled after airglow experiments that use high-frequency radio waves to generate artificial aurora. Her compositions by her are only considered complete artworks once they are received by radio on the ground after having ascended to and descended from the ionosphere. Christie states the interference, distortion, and modifications made by the ionosphere are an important part of the artwork's aesthetics. In fact, I see the ionosphere's contribution to the artwork to be just as important as my own. You never know what you're going to get, and the results are different depending on where on the planet you receive the transmissions. As a citizen science experiment, shortwave listeners from around the world are encouraged to tune in, then upload audio and video recordings of their receptions to an online repository. Reception reports for compositions number 1 and 2 have been received from Brazil, Germany, Australia, American Samoa, and Japan, as well as more than 20 additional countries. For the general public, a version of the transmission is live streamed on the project's website. Composition 1 contained SSTV images and audio works, was transmitted in March 2019. Composition 2 expanded these media to include narrowband TV video and was transmitted in October of 2022. Now, composition number 3. Christie has invited contributions from other artists, including Vladislav Atavin, Vladimir Atavin, Jose Alejandro Rivera, Sarah Nance, Rasu Young Tujan, and Geneviève Dortin, and T.D. Walker. Ghosts in the Airglow is generously supported by Canada Council for the Arts. The third and final part of Christie's residency is additionally supported by the Arts Board of New Brunswick. For more information on the Ghosts in the Airglow, including the past reception reports, composition 1 and 2, upcoming information regarding times and frequencies for the composition number 3, you can go to ghostsintheairglow.space. August 14th, that's tonight, once again, 11:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Several frequencies and times are going to be used, so for the different times that starts at 03:30, we'll post the link. That's where all the information is going to be. Follow everywhere that radio links are shared, because there's a nice little 1 hour schedule of different frequencies and movements that will be received. And I would actually tell you, for the maximum effective reception, use a software-defined receiver.
Yeah, last time the signals were very easy to pick up, and it's kind of odd. It's not your normal shortwave transmissions. If you're looking for program content, this is going to be a little out of the ordinary. So you do want to check it out. And if you can't get to it on any of your radios, or if you're not on one of the SDRs, as Amanda said, the streams will be on the website. So again, go to ghostsintheairglow.space. Our next story comes to us from Radio World, and it's the Radio Hall of Fame announcing their 2023 inductees. The Museum of Broadcast Communications has announced the selection of 8 new inductees into the Radio Hall of Fame for 2023. This year's inductees will be honored at the in-person Radio Hall of Fame induction ceremony on November the 2nd in New York City. 2022 Radio Hall of Fame inductee Christopher Mad Dog Russo will serve as the Master of Ceremonies for the event. Tickets are currently on sale online, and a portion of all proceeds will be donated to the Museum of Broadcast Communications. The 2023 Radio Hall of Fame inductees are John DeBella, Jerry House, Deborah Parenti, Bob Rivers, Pat St. John, Shadow Stevens, Nina Totenberg, and Charles Warfield. The 6 inductees were determined by a voting participant panel comprised of more than 950 industry professionals, and 2 inductees were voted on by the Radio Hall of Fame nominating committee. The confidential ballot was conducted by Votum.com and overseen by Miller Kaplan's Andrew Rosen, according to a press release. Dennis Green, co-chair of the Radio Hall of Fame, said in a release, "On behalf of the Radio Hall of Fame nominating committee, we are proud to induct 8 individuals into the Radio Hall of Fame who have made an indelible impact upon the industry. It is a pleasure to honor the careers of these individuals who quite simply define excellence in the industry and have earned the right to be called a Hall of Famer." You can find more information, including photos of the inductees, at radiohalloffame.com. The Radio Hall of Fame honors notable personalities, showcasing their accomplishments in the Chicago-based Museum of Broadcast Communications. Each year, 24 nominations are slated by the organization's nominating committee, which is comprised of industry leaders. The Radio Hall of Fame was founded by the Emerson Radio Corporation in 1988. So congratulations to all of those inductees. Some of them are syndicated announcers on various shows that you can find in many different locations around North America.
In our next story, we have the U.S. Federal Drug Administration that proposes changes to how pharma can advertise on radio. This is via Radio Inc. The FDA is moving ahead with a proposal to revise regulations concerning radio prescription drug advertising. The Office of Management and Budget is currently reviewing the final rule, which would change the focus on how a drug's most crucial risks are presented in advertisements. The proposed changes, which originated in 2010, include requirements that the language must be accessible to consumers. The proposal has seen periods of inactivity with no official entries between 2012 and 2023, but the latest movement indicates a renewed interest in revising these regulations. In the FDA abstract, it states prescription drug advertisements presented through media such as TV and radio must disclose the product's major side effects and contraindications in what is sometimes called the major statement. The rule would revise the regulation to reflect the statutory requirement that in advertisements for human prescription drugs presented in television or radio format, in stating the name of the drug and its conditions of use, the major statement relating to side effects and contraindications of the advertised drug must be presented in a clear, conspicuous, and neutral manner. This rule also establishes standards for determining whether the major statement in these advertisements is presented in the manner required. Proposed changes include that audio must be clear through proper volume, articulation, and pacing. Text information must be easy to read with appropriate contrast and large font, and distractions that could detract from the essential statement must be minimized. Post-COVID pharmaceutical companies have been ramping up their radio advertising. Pharma and drugstore spending on network radio has increased by 59% since 2018. It remains to be seen how any regulatory changes would affect that spend. We talked about it, should also be something here in Canada. And, one of the things I notice in many ads in the United States on radio is how they speed up the ad so that they can actually maximize the amount of talk that they have in that ad in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, we see it all the time now. I think the main culprit that probably all of you have seen at one time or heard at one time or another is Ozempic right now. The strange thing I find in the ads is that they never do tell you what the drugs are made for. Go and ask your doctor about X, whatever the drug is. Certainly side effects are important. Certainly, there's been a regulation here in Canada, I know, and maybe elsewhere, where often on a talk show, you might hear a doctor from a hospital pop on and, start answering questions from callers. They have to be very careful about this to not actually give medical advice, though. They can sort of, they play around with it a little bit, but they have to be very careful with it. You cannot diagnose somebody, for example, by hearing them talk to you on the telephone over the radio. These are dangerous things to do. So there are regulations that prevent that. And this, I guess, is going a little bit further in, putting these very precise rules and regulations on advertising of prescription drugs. Our next story, I love this next story, being a big fan of the old TV series WKRP back in, believe it or not, way back in 1978. It comes to us from Radio Inc., and the headline is Radio Inc. to honor legendary WKRP program director Andy Travis in Cincinnati. It's a show that many in the industry know and love. In September of 1978, WKRP in Cincinnati made its debut on TV, telling the story of an underdog AM radio station featuring everyone's dream program director, Andy Travis, played by actor Gary Sandy. The show not only popular with the American public, it provided one of the most enduring television episodes of all time and inspired many to enter the radio profession. Now, Andy is returning to Cincinnati for the Radio Masters Sales Summit, where Radio Inc. will present Gary Sandy with the first ever Radio Wayne Influencer Award in person. Born in Dayton, Ohio, Gary Sandy attended Wilmington College of Ohio and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. He began his acting career in daytime dramas, working on soap operas As the World Turns, Another World, Somerset, and The Secret Storm. Before and after his work on WKRP in Cincinnati, Sandy performed in countless film and TV productions. He has performed in over 100 theatrical productions. Sandy has also been active in live radio drama and continues to appear in theatrical productions around the country. Radio Inc. president and publisher Deborah Parenti said, "We are especially excited and proud to present this award to Gary Sandy. His portrayal of the much-loved Andy Travis brought to life a character who inspired many to join the radio profession, and his ongoing career in both stage and screen roles beyond that memorable show have only continued to provide inspiration and admiration through his multifaceted talents. It's kind of odd to honor a fictitious person, but in effect they're actually honoring the actor himself for the character that he played. So that really is kind of neat. I find that really nice of them to have done that. And I'm sure, as they say, watching that show, people were influenced by, hey, wow, working in a radio station must be really a lot of fun. After such a long time, all the way back to 1978, he's getting this special recognition for his work on that show. So I think that's really great.
Also shows how WKRP was much closer to reality than a lot of people think.
Yeah, so many people call it a documentary rather than a situation comedy. So much that went on in that show, I'm sure, actually went on behind the scenes in some of those 1970s and 80s radio stations out there.
So what's happening with our sun? Well, the sun was very active this week, had several X-class flares, which are some of the most powerful flares. Not Earth-directed, though, so we did have a little bit of radio blackouts here and there because of these solar storms. We also had a G2, G1, G2 class geomagnetic storm that happened. So right now there's one sunspot, AR3395, that we have to watch. You never know. It could actually harbor energy for M-class flares. So when that happens, of course, we have on shortwave blackouts that happen for several minutes to an hour. Then, depending on the flare, if it's Earth-directed, we could actually face some geomagnetic storming later on. But for now, things are quiet. And the sunspot number 83, the solar flux 153. Conditions are very good when the sun quiets down a little bit. Turn on the radio. There's a lot of activity in the high frequencies, really, really good propagation when it's quieter. So the only way to really witness all of this is to actually turn on a radio and listen.
I'm Richard Cuff of Allentown, Pennsylvania. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
So we have in our next story, Sirius XM, that will broadcast Farm Aid once again in September. As Farm Aid returns to Indiana for the third time, Sirius XM is bringing the entire festival to its subscribers on 3 channels: Willie's Roadhouse, Dave Matthews Band Radio, and the Grateful Dead channel will broadcast the September 23rd benefit concert. Farm Aid 2023 will feature performances from board members Willie Nelson, Neil Young, John Mellencamp, Dave Matthews, alongside Tim Reynolds, and Margot Price. Other notable performances will include Bobby Weir and the Wolf Brothers, with the Wolfpack, Nathaniel Ratliff and the Night Sweats, Lucas Nelson, Alison Russell, the String Cheese Incident, and Particle Kid. Alongside the live coverage, SiriusXM will provide backstage interviews with artists and narratives from family farmers conducted by Dallas Wayne and Ari Fink. Listeners will gain a comprehensive view of Farm Aid 2023 and the organization's continued efforts to strengthen family farm agriculture. So this is neat. It's nice to see that SiriusXM is kicking in to have 3 channels that will actually be implicated in the live feed of Farm Aid 2023.
Yeah, nice to see Farm Aid continuing, and artists like Neil Young and Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, they've been around and supportive of that Farm Aid for many, many years now. So if you want to tune that in. We next take you to a disturbing story, and this comes from the Latin American Journalism Review by Catherine Penacchio. The closure of radio stations in Venezuela continues as news deserts grow. There's no end to the closure of radio stations in Venezuela. In recent weeks, Radio Caracas, or Radio RCR, the oldest radio station in Venezuela, ended its operation on digital platforms, and the radio station Éxtasis 97.7 FM in Taquira, with 29 years on the air, stopped broadcasting after the government administration ordered its closure. In 2022, the highest number of radio closures in Venezuela was recorded, with at least 95 stations taken off the air. In 2023, the closures have not yet stopped. During the first 5 months of 2023, the Press and Society Institute of Venezuela had already registered the closure of 5 radio stations in 4 states. Now, these 2 most recent ones have been added. I've seen a new escalation. It probably has to do with the fact that in the absence of national or regional TV channels posing several severe criticisms to the regime, people have taken refuge in small spaces of regional radio stations, trying to seek information and opinion on the things that happen to them on a daily basis. Issues of electricity, water, crime, traffic, transportation, etc. Neomar Hernandez, journalist and former broadcaster of RCR, said. Radio, especially local and small town radio stations, were the last stronghold to glimpse some kind of reality. That's why this regime, which has a totalitarian nature, seeks to close them down. We've been practically left in a news desert, Hernandez added. According to the Atlas del Silencio report by IPYS Venezuela, news deserts are municipalities or parishes where there are not enough press outlets to inform the population. In Venezuela, radio is the medium with the greatest reach, but almost half of its population lives without guarantee of having access to local news. The state with the highest number of news deserts is Taquira, with 28 locations, followed by Zulia with 19 and Sucre with 14. The radio station closures will also coincide with the pre-election process in Venezuela. The country's presidential elections for the 2025 to 2031 period will be held in 2024. In addition, the Venezuelan opposition is campaigning in the primary elections to be held on October the 22nd of 2023. So, tell me that radio is not important.
Yeah, in Venezuela, things have been going pretty much downhill for several years now. Unfortunately, once again, free press and free speech being beaten and battered here is something that is continuing. And of course, the best way to do that is let's shut down radio stations. Let's not have them on the air so that it won't influence the elections in some way. There needs to be some form of long-distance radio that is outside of the boundaries of the country where you cannot access or shut it down when it has news for you.
Yeah, it was one of the countries that had a lot of shortwave tropical band stations that you could tune into, and they covered the remote parts of the country, providing people with information. Now those people in those areas that they're talking about that have become news deserts just don't have anything available to them.
In our next news item, we have the BBC new podcast Fights News Disinformation in Young Adults. This is, of course, via the BBC. BBC World Service has begun a daily news podcast designed for a younger audience titled What in the World? The podcast began on July 31st and is available every weekday. Hosted by Hannah Gelbart, What in the World helps listeners comprehend global news stories across a variety of topics. Questions such as, what can we learn from the extreme weather in India, or what is happening with the migrants in Tunisia, forms the basis of the episodes. Around a quarter of the BBC World Service English audience falls in the 16 to 24 age group. As per the United Nations, this age group represents about 16% of the global population, roughly 1.2 billion people. In an era of misinformation, the podcast aims to provide this audience with factual content. BBC journalists from 42 language services around the world will feature frequently in the podcast. The podcast episodes, ranging from 9 to 15 minutes in duration, will revolve around audience questions and shared content, exploring potential solutions to global issues. Gerbart served as the BBC's global disinformation reporter. She and John Zilka, controller of World Service English, expressed excitement over the project, emphasizing its aim to provide trusted news and information to young audiences worldwide. I'm excited to be working with the top team for this podcast, helping our listeners to understand and feel a bit better about the world around them. I'm looking forward to chatting each day with our BBC reporters across the globe, giving you what you need to make sense of the information out there. John Zelka said, What in the World is tailored to young audiences and will provide a source of trusted news and information for these listeners globally. Using the expertise of our journalists around the world, we will examine the stories that matter most and focus on positive solutions, something we know young audiences are longing to hear. So you'll be able to find the What in the World podcast at bbc.co.uk/sounds/podcasts. We'll put the link up. This is a great idea in our times of where can you access, information, good information, and maybe learn more about the world that is around you.
I'm very surprised that the quarter of the BBC World Service English audience is in the 16 to 24 age group. That's a number I've not heard before, and I find that very, very surprising. When you talk about young people not paying much attention to the news and not going to conventional services like the BBC World Service, that number is pretty staggering. BBC has got, well, I guess they've had the resources. How much longer they might have them, I'm not sure, because they keep getting cut. But they have a very good audience research facility where they can look at all of the numbers and figure out who's listening and where they're listening and that sort of thing. So nice to see that they've incorporated all of their language services into these podcasts as well. Journalists from 42 different language services
pretty good,
contributing to these podcasts.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Coming up next weekend, a number of different things for you as a ham radio operator or as a shortwave listener can participate in. The first one is organized by the Scandinavian Amateur Radio Teleprinter Group. It is their worldwide RTTY contest. It runs from 0000 August 19th to 1600 August 20th. It's 80 through 10 meters, and it's a radio teletype only event.
There's the North American QSO Party, SSB, 1800 Zulu August 19th to 0559 Zulu August 20th, organized by the National Contest Journal. Bands are 160 through 10 meters, no work bands. Mode SSB only.
The CVA DX contest is organized by the Radio Amateur School of Communications Club in Portugal. It is their DX contest, a CW portion, 2100 Zulu August 19th to 2100 Zulu August 20th, 10 through 160 meters, and it is a CW only event.
And there's the ARRL Rookie Roundup Radio Teletype contest or event, 18 Zulu to 2359 Zulu, August 20th. So this is organized by the American Radio Relay League. The objective, newly licensed hams, rookies in North America, are encouraged to exchange information with as many other stations as possible. Experienced hams are encouraged to participate and to help out rookies in person or on the air. Bands are 80 to 10 meters, no work bands, of course, and this is RTTY only.
Okay, RTTY is a mode that's kind of getting forgotten a little bit with FT8 out there. So this is to sort of encourage people to continue to use that mode of communication. So you can check that out on the bands as well. So lots of activity going on next weekend. That will do it for us. Do try to tune in this evening for the Ghosts in the Airglow transmissions from the HARP facility. We'll put up the links for you and let us know if you're able to monitor them. It'd be great to send in your reports as well and get those special QSL cards that will be available. We'll be back again next Sunday here on CKUT FM in Montreal with the next edition of the International Radio Report. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.